Bitcoiners, welcome, welcome. The sun is up and Bitcoin is running. Let's have a coffee, talk about what's new. Well, I still have a bit of a cough. Good morning, Count. Good morning, Boo Boo Bodacious. Good morning, fellow counters. Yes, indeed, let us count. Enmity, good morning. Joe, good morning, everyone. McTimmy, it's so good to be back. It's so good to be back with you. I really missed you. It was not easy. It was a lot of sickness. Never take a 2 week cruise is my big takeaway. Right? 1 week was fine. It was great. Week two, ay, ay, ay. These are not healthy environments is my takeaway. And we did our best, but tending to children and the COVID thing, it's an IQ lowering sickness, right? You get all that deoxygenation going on in your lungs. And you can't really think straight. And I thought I could do a show yesterday. I got up early and did my best, but I mean, nothing was coming. It was pure low IQ. 1 second, I don't know what's going on here. Pee break for a kid. Sorry, guys. So, deoxygenation and I just couldn't do it. And tending to kids, it was just not the right environment or time. Where did I just put all this? There it is. All right. But we got a great show today. We got a great show. We're back. We're back. Maybe we're not 100%, but we're back. We're good. We're good. We'll be back in the George Washington House today. We're just catching us get off the boat here and transfer into the place where we will be until late April, just before Bitcoin 2023, May 18th, 20th. Big speakers coming. I just bagged a really nice one yesterday because we have a real big focus on independent media, and you'll hear more about that coming up. I bagged a couple actually in the past couple days, so we're doing well. As you know, we like to start with the fakest news of the day, and I gotta admit, I really, really wanted to do a show when the Wall Street Journal came up with that skip breakfast. Just skip breakfast. It's fine. Now, it is actually good advice. I never eat breakfast as a male adult. I don't think everyone in the world needs to skip breakfast, but it works for me. P-Man Van, good to see you back, Nolan. Thank you, P-Man Van. Good to see you too. Good to see you too. It was really not an easy couple of days, but we're over it. We're good. We're good. But I do have a few more Moscow time fake news stories out there. Of course, there's the one that's making the rounds where Bill Gates has decided it's okay for him to fly because he can afford it. This is what he says. Bill Gates defends his use of a polluting private jet after flying to Australia to lecture about climate change and reveals why he's not part of the problem, right? Well, he can buy offsets. Good for Bill Gates, right? Whose reputation? I mean, I'm not one of these people. Bill Gates is trying to control the population of the world, people, right? I'm not there. But boy, oh boy, of all the people whose reputations are just in tatters after COVID and who can probably never be taken seriously again, despite his high IQ and all the pretty good stuff he's done, right? I like the toilets. The toilet is the only thing in the end that might make it through this failure on his part. But analyzing him from a business point of view now and looking at the whole thing in retrospect, right? The nuclear thing also works, right? I like his focus on nuclear energy, and one can imagine he wants to see the world using more energy in a clean way, but all of this stuff just makes us think history might not be so kind to Mr. Bill Gates. Here's another one. This is from the Daily Mail. Death of Clinton aide linked to Jeffrey Epstein found shot and tied to a tree with an electrical cord around his neck is ruled a suicide. Now, I don't know if this is fake news or not. I can't tell the difference anymore. Is this real? I mean, maybe, but it's pretty funny to find a guy. And by the way, it's in Arkansas, right? And another weird thing yesterday that people are talking about is there was a flight from Arkansas to East Palestine, Ohio, where all of the stuff happened with the trains. And it turns out that the flight from Arkansas had about 5 scientists who are going up to check out the environmental damage or whatever. Well, they're all dead. That happened yesterday. The plane crashed. So they left from the Bill and Hillary Clinton airport and they're gone. who knows? Who knows what's going on, right? Here's another good one. This is from Pennsylvania. A school district in Pennsylvania has become the first in the state to give approval of a club sponsored by the Satanic Temple. Great news. Great news. So, you know, thinking of satanic temples and all of this kind of stuff, and especially about this grand juror. What's her name again? This grand juror. What was her name? I got it here somewhere. Anyway, this girl who went on television, and she's part of the January 6th grand jury. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but she's got all these really weird mannerisms, and she's on TV sort of gleefully. We were going to get Trump. We were going to get these people. We were going to get that. And everyone was kind of talking about it yesterday. And first of all, it reminded me of a medieval meme, right? The main meme of the medieval period was something called Lady Fortuna. And it was the Wheel of Fortune. And you would spin the wheel, and she was always often blindfolded, right? And whatever came, right? So Lady Fortuna was legit nutso. Yeah, she's legit nutso. But here's what I think about legit nutso, but the context of Lady Fortuna and where we're at in America and the world and how much things are changing. Is it something that... So, and then people have also gone and checked out her online history, what she's done in life, who she is. So it turns out this witch... it turns out this woman, she practices witchcraft, right? So they found out she practices Wiccan stuff, and she has a Pinterest, which is just filled with spells and all kinds of, fun stuff, I suppose you could say, right? So she now is a self-identified witch, and it kind of makes you think of this Lady Fortuna thing, because just one generation ago, you had the puritanical authorities in America randomly burning people as witches, right? So that was a thing, right? That really happened in America. And now it's witches randomly prosecuting political people. Am I seeing it correctly? Is that what's happening? Watching a witch laugh at Trump and all these people who've been imprisoned and making it sound funny is an exact reversal of American history. It's Lady Fortuna writ large. It's a medieval meme come to life. The same thing can happen, except the tables are reversed. And it also reminds me of this whole UFO story, right? Hear me out for a second. The UFO story in the 50s, it was always done this way. It was always air balloons were the cover story for UFOs. Right? No, there were no UFOs. It's air balloons. Right? It's weather balloons. It's not UFOs. But this time, what's happened? Right? With all that UFO talk a week and a half ago, what happened? It was air balloons that people were saying might be UFOs. They might come from another planet. Oh no, be careful. So again, you have an exact reversal. 180-degree reversal. It is the Lady Fortuna Wheel of Fortune meme at scale. And I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, but Eric Weinstein, who I've interviewed before and who has participated in Bitcoin Magazine's show, he was there last year, Bitcoin 2022. I actually watched the Jordan Peterson Tur de Meester interview with him, which was kind of a neat coincidence because when I interviewed him in 2019, it was the framework I used for the interview was Tur de Meester's Dutch Protestant Revolution Bitcoin paper. I used that as the frame for our conversation. So it was a balloon reversal. Yeah, Joe says it was a balloon reversal. Yeah, isn't that funny? That for years the balloon thing was no. There's no aliens. They're weather balloons. This time, no. There's no weather balloons. We don't know. Maybe it's aliens. Funny, just funny. So heading back to this story on Eric Weinstein. So turns out Eric Weinstein, so he did Joe Rogan yesterday. It's a 4-hour interview. I have not seen it all, but the highlights are starting to come out. And I've seen a few clips, and he's got one talking about the alien thing. And he's been invited several times to meet the alien spacecraft. They say, you're going to meet at this time, and we're going to blindfold you, and we just got to show you what's going on. So Eric Weinstein, every single time, I said, yeah, sure. Like, I'm not going to say no. I might get to see aliens. That could be pretty cool. And apparently Sam Harris has been invited for the same thing, but it never happens. They never pick them up. It's always next week. It's always we're coming. So both of these guys have now completely given up on any idea of the alien people actually housing something or having something to show them that's useful or relevant. I don't know exactly what he explains away their misleading behavior and why they invite him and all those things. But, it's happening. So they were talking about all this alien business and what it means and how much of a distraction it's been causing. They didn't get to the point that I just made, that it's a weird reversal of the 50s concept, right? It's a weird reversal of, oh, it's not aliens, it's actually weather balloons, and now it's weather balloons, but maybe they're aliens, right? So it's not, it's they didn't really get to that observation, but they did talk about the lack of credibility. They did talk about the failures of folks to be able to even analyze and talk about this stuff in a way that would be at all helpful. And you see in this instance that a fellow like Eric Weinstein is now doubting almost everything that's come out of the institutions that have helped sort of define reality for so long. And he also took a really interesting shot at Sam Harris during this conversation. So, Sam Harris, of course, has become known as the probably number one Trump derangement syndrome sufferer, right? Probably the person whose intellect has been most crippled and debased by the effect that Trump can have on people. And Eric Weinstein actually got into it and said, the reason it happened is that he just couldn't see Trump's intelligence. He couldn't understand that Trump had an angle every single time, and that it wasn't just lucky, and that he wasn't just falling into these observations and that success. And he underlines that, of course, Trump is the only person to have come from zero political background, including no military service, to become president in the history of America. So he's the only person to have zero government or elected experience and military experience, yet still ascend to the presidency. And that Sam Harris never even accounted for talent being the main reason why he got there is indeed what ended up crippling him. And Eric Weinstein goes in a little bit into what makes Trump so clever. And you can see it in the East Palestine story yesterday, where Trump instinctively, I don't know if it's instinctively, but did the calculations, looked at Biden over in Ukraine, and just used the contrast, right? Contrast is always one of the greatest ways to persuade. If you can contrast, clearly you don't have to explain things, right? We talk about the contrast principle a lot on the show. We talk about how contrast, even now with Bitcoin and crypto, is such a good thing, right? When people get mad at maxis and Bitcoiners for always wanting to have that contrast with crypto, for years it was like, oh, come on, guys, we're all on the same team, we're all getting along, but wrong. The contrast is actually what is helping Bitcoin more than ever. To see a protocol actually live in a decentralized fashion, and the opposite when you had SBF and all of those things and all the scams and all the rug pulls and all that kind of stuff, it allows Bitcoin to proliferate and be understood by people at a much larger scale. It's not an intellectual argument anymore. It's just contrast. And that's an easier way and more efficient way for humans to learn. And so Trump going yesterday, right? So this is from someone who just saw it and said, like, this is exactly where Trump's skill set lies. He can feel or seek out these instances where you get contrast and really highlight the differences. So all he did was walk around East Palestine and talk to people, but you could see genuine love for the guy. You could see genuine care for the guy. And it's remarkable because even given his age, his ability to connect with people of all ages should be a sign that you're dealing with someone whose intelligence is quite high. I mean, the emotional, the EQ component is off the charts, right? To be able to have those connections with people who are just average people, right? There's nothing special about them. They're sitting outside of McDonald's trying to get their hats autographed from Donald Trump because he's in town. And he's able to have, whether or not you don't have to mind read him, right? It looks genuine. It looks genuine. And that's all that really matters. The contrast is there. And Yeah, visually Trump nailed it, is what Joe says. Yeah, yeah, visually Trump nailed it. That's exactly it, right? He totally nailed it. But when you consider these institutions and the exact same things Eric Weinstein was criticizing about Sam Harris and official narratives and everything from the Biden administration these days with Ukraine and all of the media that went into congratulating Biden on his trip to Ukraine, right? All of that media, there's been a ton of it over the past few days. Oh, it was historic. It was the most amazing thing ever. What it ends up reminding me of, and this is to bring things back to aliens a little bit, right? This is to bring it back to aliens. When you read these people from, or read what those people write, or hear what those people say from that old era, from the fiat world, more and more it sounds like aliens trying to explain what life is like on Earth to people that have already transferred into the Bitcoin standard or have already given up on the institutions of a previous age. And it really does sound like they're trying to explain activity on Earth as if they've just arrived, right? Well, this is probably better. This is historic, right? But there's no real context for it being historic other than a couple comparisons and some word thinking and some, trying to tie one story to another. When it's like when Churchill went to Berlin, right, after World War II. Well, maybe, but he fell down the stairs again. The president fell down the stairs, right? He had to have nothing but these markers on the ground for blocking. It's what you do in acting on stage, so you can see where you're supposed to be, because it's very hard with lights on you to see where you're supposed to be. But he's just doing this in the middle of the day. And of course, he had the Alzheimer's shuffle again, right? The shuffling around. He doesn't know where to go. So you can either listen to these folks saying historic, the most amazing thing ever, which looks a little bit like aliens trying to explain normal stuff to people, or you can look at it with your own eyes, and it ends up looking like a person who is clearly a propped up steward and is getting pushed around as a prop on stage. And I think it is, again, one of the greatest punishments for him and everything that's gone on in the past few years, to watch him not be able to fill the most basic role and to be so confused and to be so doddering and old is pretty funny at once, but it also exposes anyone who would see it otherwise and try to convince you otherwise of what's going on. So it's a lot like aliens now. And that contrast of having things explained to you in a way that don't make any sense at all and seem insane kind of pervades everything right now, right? It kind of pervades everything. Listen to what the this is from the Czech president-elect yesterday. This is the Czech president-elect yesterday. And they just had a great president, right? Václav Havel. He was a huge fan of Trump. He's one of the biggest anti-global warming catastrophist voices out there. If you don't know much about him, I always recommend going to learn about the previous Czech president, Václav Havel. But here's the new one, General Pavel, right? He used to be in NATO. This is what he's saying about Russia and everything that's going on. Russia are using narratives that are very much different from reality, he says General Pavel, former NATO commander and Czech president-elect. They feed their population with propaganda, they distort reality, and that's why it's so difficult to talk to them on any issues today. And, as an American or Canadian or anyone who understands what's going on in the West, to have someone say that out loud without acknowledging the Twitter files, without acknowledging the hoaxes that have been perpetrated on the American people for years now, one hoax after the other, to see that and to see things like yesterday in the New York Times, oh, masks don't work, or was it 2 days ago, right? But for a long time, we were told you were a Nazi if you didn't wear a mask. So to see these other leaders, especially ones that come from the military-industrial complex like NATO, tell us that it's hard to deal with Russia because they have so many psyops, which is true. I mean, no one's denying there's psyops constantly in Russia every day, right? We don't trust Putin, on this show anyway, right? We don't trust any of these systems. So to hear someone say, well, they've got it there but not here, after all we've learned, is like an alien trying to tell us what's going on Earth. It's like someone who just arrived said, well, this is what I see, right? But of course, they're coming across as someone from a different planet that we can't even relate to. So, but it's not just that story. It's not just the Czech president and psyops and all that stuff. What about this one? Look at Cato, right? Cato Institute. So the Cato Institute yesterday. So if you guys don't know what the Cato Institute, it's a libertarian think tank, apparently, right? It is an apparent right-wing think tank, libertarian think tank. For a long time, pre-Bitcoin, tons of people took it really seriously. Before there was such a thing as Bitcoin and the ability to actually see a third rail, a new way, people thought they might be the ones who provided it from an intellectual point of view. You had all kinds of Bitcoin maxis that used to be interested in Cato publications. I was, right? I'm one of those people who's like, what did Cato say about it, right? Well, I'm going to cite Cato, right? The Cato Institute. They're independent and not interested in either party. Well, here's what they say about the US elections. Now, the reason why this will stick out to Bitcoiners is because we understand the trade-offs in engineering networks and the security and the trade-offs between convenience and security that are so important when building systems in order to do things like vote or run our money, right? Important things. So here's what Walter Olson said. More cold water thrown on some alarmist election claims. I've written more than once about the rival voter suppression and ballot integrity schools of left and right encourage an alarmist picture of an American electoral system in crisis, even though the evidence by and large shows the election system we have tending to work pretty well. Right. So what he's basically saying is, we have no evidence. We looked at the courts, the Cato Institute again, citing courts as if courts understand the inner workings of engineering from a software and hardware point of view. Right? Of course they don't. They're language engineers and really can only understand the manipulation of language and don't really have any other mandate or capacity to get into this stuff. As Bitcoiners, we understand there's always been a trade-off in ease of use for a system, right? The ease of use for a system, the convenience of a system. So in the case of voting, no ID laws, right? Much easier. Vote anytime, advanced polling, all that kind of stuff. Very easy, right? Makes it much more convenient. But there's a trade-off every single time. When you make those choices for ease of voting, the other end of it, which is the credibility of the elections, go down because the surface area of attack is greater, right? The most credible way of running elections are done in Israel, where you go into a room and there's only paper ballots and you need ID to get in, and there's people from everywhere, from every party, from every fact-checking institution that are just looking and making sure that the ballot that you sign goes in the box and can't be tampered with. And then it never leaves the box, right? It's accounted for there. And so the surface area of attack is greatly diminished, but you need your ID and you got to show up at your date and time, right? So that's harder, but it's more credible, right? No one's doubting the credibility of the outcomes. So you can't avoid the trade-off between credibility and convenience when it comes to building these systems. You just can't avoid it. So when you get these people who are trying to intellectualize away and use words to wash away the physical realities of engineering, you end up getting into this situation where you're trying to be as wishy-washy as possible. I tried to read this article. It's absolute garbage. It goes on and on and on and on forever, citing all of these stupid examples about this court said, and we found out that, voting with some ID is not so bad, and we found out that ballot harvesting is kind of normal, and all these other takeaways. But of course, none of it makes any sense. And again, anyone who understands these systems, listening to someone like the Cato Institute explain this to you is akin now to listening to a libertarian who doesn't know anything about Bitcoin explain to you how the Federal Reserve or some pre-existing system can be salvaged in order to help perpetuate a better future. Right? This guy's planning on you reading his 40,000 page essay, 40,000 word essay in order to convince you that we don't have election problems in America. Right? Well, just go look at Arizona, right? Just have a look, right? Have a look at Arizona. Patrick Byrne, a Bitcoiner, says here, he responded to it. This is the Cato Institute tweet. They say the rival voter suppression and ballot integrity schools of left and right continue to encourage an alarmist picture of an American electoral system in crisis. And Patrick Byrne says correctly, Cato has been missing in action since day one, right? And isn't that the truth? Missing in action since day one. Now, you can see more aliens trying to explain the world to us when you got to see this. You got to see Tony Blair, the former UK Prime Minister, selling us on ID cards that have health stuff related to them. Someone gave him a job at the WEF, the Davos thing, and he hasn't shut his mouth since about this stuff. So here's what he says. Tony Blair and William Hague call for digital ID cards for everyone. Two cheeks of the same, this is from James Melville. Two cheeks of the same backside. Digital ID isn't about your security and convenience. It's all about corporatism and government control and surveillance. And of course, they're there trying to argue that, we need these systems, 15-minute cities and all that kind of stuff. To watch one of these old, decrepit, rotten in the brain people who have lived a life of corruption sit here and explain to us what we need to do about our IDs and where we can go and where we can come. Again, it's like aliens have tried to come and influence us on Earth about things that we don't give a shit about. But I got an even better one, and this one's from Canada, right? So remember I've mentioned many times, many times, that World War III is really about a flip, let's say, right? America, Inc., Canada, Inc., won World War II. But Americans and Canadians didn't do so great in the end, right? Didn't do so great in the end. I see a lot of health problems, a lot of people struggling, Canadians struggling with real estate more than anyone in the world, right? Really getting it bad. Cost of living in Canada through the roof. Cost of living in, the know-it-all coefficient, the know-it-all concentration in Canada is just higher than the United States. It's like a California at scale at a national level, in a sense, right? So too many people with degrees, too many people who work off of the fiat system and have some credentialed level of authority telling you what to do. It's just a higher concentration. So they suffer more. And what they've been doing for a long time now is getting really angry about independent media coming in through the internet and influencing this whole cocktail because, of course, they're authorities, right? They are the authorities. And they passed a law last year which will do to Google searches in Canada what China, no kidding, what China did to Google searches in China. And so they're going to be testing, this is from Reuters, Google tests blocking news content for some Canadians. Google is rolling out tests that block access to news content for some Canadian users, the company confirmed on Wednesday. And what it says is a test run of potential response to the government's online news bill. The Online News Act of House of Commons, introduced last April by Trudeau, laid out rules to force platforms like Facebook and Google to negotiate commercial deals and pay news publishers for their content. We're briefly testing potential product responses to Bill C-18 that will impact very small percentage of Canadian users. We run thousands of tests each year, they say. The tech giant confirmed that the time-limited tests, which impact a random sampling of less than 4% of the users in Canada, limit the visibility of Canadian and international news to varying degrees. So, what's going on here is anything they don't like can just be filtered away. Anything. There's no real guardrails on this thing. I've looked at the law. It is an ad hoc thing. And the reason it's an ad hoc thing is because Canada never really was able to survive in a media, in a corporate media sense after the invention of the internet, because we were already inundated with American signal. And our own domestic signal was already on the ropes, as it were. And we don't have huge networks like NBC and what they have in the United States that can absorb the shock of change, right? So we have the crappy CBC in Canada, which is the worst news and television network on earth and always has been. I mean, such low quality. You can't have an IQ of 100 and still watch that thing. It's not possible, right? It's that stupid, and it has been for a long time. So they have this really terrible news thing, and what ended up happening was about 10 years ago, they were complaining about money so much because the internet was killing them. And it wasn't just the left-wing ones, it was the right-wing ones too, because they were all going bankrupt. So the minute Trudeau got in, he subsidized them all. So now he more or less is a major part of their cash flow. And you can tell in the content, it's totally different. There's barely ever any criticism of him. I mean, for real, as insane as it sounds, Canada no longer has anything like a functioning media. I mean, America's is bad, right? We don't have a functioning media in America either. But Canada's is now clearly as bad as China's. So when we think of this Lady Fortuna thing again, right, spinning wheels, right, when we think of World War III, think of the shine that was on U.S. and Canadian institutions coming out of World War II. Right? Huge, right? Every one of the institutions were the things that were highlighted as the reasons why we won the war. Now those institutions are just jokes. It's like aliens selling us on an idea. Right? No clue what motivates us, no clue what interests us. Now, of course, there's always going to be people that, oh, great, CBC, right? Great, government-sponsored media. I love Trudeau. I love Biden. Ukraine, right? All these kinds of things. So there's still going to be those people, but more and more people are just going to be turned off. And more people are going to keep, I mean, the ratings of CBC, you couldn't imagine how bad they are. They might get a retweet. I mean, it's lower than the Atlantic in the United States, and that's a national broadcaster. They can't get retweets. They can't get engagement. It's garbage, complete garbage. And this probably will make it worse. Are we going to have changes in Canada? Who knows? Who knows? But there is one big change coming in America, and I'll tell you what it is. It's incredible. And this is a Lady Fortuna thing about World War II again, right? And this is going to, I think, if I'm correct, start unraveling a lot of the trouble. And it's this. The U.S. House Oversight Committee has asked the Department of Defense and the State Department to account for the $113 billion thus far allocated to assist Ukraine. It sounds like nothing, right? Sounds like nothing. Sounds like just a little auditing and accounting, right? Maybe it's a little auditing and accounting, but it is a follow the money analysis, and follow the money analysis lead to places that you don't always want to see, right? Or we want to see, but not always everyone who's looking into it. And in World War II, one of the most significant turns of history was when Harry Truman, as a senator, launched exactly this. Harry Truman became vice president and then became president for one story. If you don't know the story of Harry Truman, you got to learn it, right? He is one of the greatest Democrat presidents in the history of the country. And he came from nothing, right? He came from absolutely zero. He got bullied by his mother-in-law his whole life. His mother-in-law lived with him even in the White House and still didn't think he was much of a man after he became the president. He was bankrupt at 40. He was running a men's clothing store in Missouri. I think he's in one of those states around there. He was running a men's clothing store. And he got a bit of a corrupt guy, helped him get into politics around the late 30s. And he got elected as a senator. And he did one thing, which was this. He started the Truman Committee, which is a Senate special committee to investigate the National Defense Program. So this is when Lend-Lease was going on. This was from 1941 on. And what was going on then is exactly what's happening now. We were giving tons of money to Europe, just giving them whatever you need, right? Money, money, money. Fight the war, fight the war. We're not going to fight, but here's money, here's supplies, here's ammo, here's whatever. Lend-Lease was exactly as it sounds, right? They lent them bullets and tanks or leased it to them, but they weren't really expecting the money back. It was all just ways of subsidizing. But not everyone was okay with that, right? America was coming out of the Depression. America's mindset was still frugal. It wasn't fiat overload of consumption and no accountability and no counting the money and no one knows what's going on and all that. They were still wondering where the heck the money's going. So Harry Truman, this really practical guy, set up the Truman Commission. And with 15 minutes, so here's what Wikipedia says. The bipartisan special committee was formed in 1941 to find and correct problems in U.S. war production with waste, inefficiency, and war profiting. The true story is, this is how Truman, he launched it himself. And he physically went to some of these military bases and was like, give me your accounting books. I just want to see where, like, how much money you get, what you're sending out. Let me see all this stuff. And they couldn't provide the most basic accounting for him. And it became a scandal. And so his profile went straight up after that, right? So here's what he found. An initial budget, he was getting $15,000 for his project, which expanded to $360,000 in 3 years. But they saved an estimated $10 to $15 billion. $10 to $15 billion just from him, a nobody who ran a little store, right? A little clothing store, a little haberdashery. And he was able to figure out what was going on. And that's the spinning of the wheel that we're experiencing, right? if this Senate Oversight Committee is able to uncover just a little bit, if it's able to do a real follow the money analysis on the psyops, on the fraud, on the money laundering, because that's what we're going to find. We're going. I'm telling you right now, we're going to find money laundering, like at scales that we can't even imagine, And this is the Lady Fortuna wheel spinning, right? We went from the allies, right? They were the allies. We're going to find out they're the all lies. They're the all lies. And the all lies are going to get exposed from this kind of follow the money analysis. And Truman did it once. We're going to see new folks do it because a follow the money analysis leads, that's why people don't like them, right? They don't like them. But a little bit of this, and we're going to get to the bottom of exactly what is going on, I think. And if that happens, you're going to start to get the mass change. You're going to start to get folks who wake up at scales that we're starting to see. I mean, we're starting to see, right? We're starting to see the masks, the vaccines, the school system. People are peeling out of the fiat world at rates that we can only be happy about. And Bitcoiners are there, of course, to absorb this new energy, to absorb all of this new enthusiasm, and of course, to share our positive vision of what we're going to build as we destroy the old system. So we're almost there, guys. We're almost there, right? We got an oversight committee. Now, I don't, this thing can get taken over. I don't have trust in these institutions at all, right? I don't. But a follow the money analysis is exactly what Bitcoiners should be hoping for, because it doesn't have to rely on the same arguments the Cato Institute guy did with election systems, right? That's kind of an engineering thing. We're advanced, right? Bitcoiners, or if we get that argument, it doesn't have to rely on the same argument that Trudeau and the new system, you have to understand Trudeau pays for the news and the news is corrupted and the search engines are keeping you from the news. Like, none of that is really that convincing, right? But to see money being stolen and to see the accountability for it, I think is going to lead us to a point where we start understanding that we got bad guys on the allies, and it's all lies that are coming from them. And we're not far now, guys. We're not far. Let's see. Do you think they will start censorship on news channels like Rebel News and True North? Yeah, of course. Of course they will. Of course. No doubt about it. Yeah. No doubt. They're going to try. They're going to try. They call them, they're, to say they wouldn't would mean they would refrain from calling them Nazis and white supremacists, which they're more than happy to do, right? So that's the same playbook, right? Nazis, white supremacists, stop them. So yeah, that's any day, guys. That's any day. Give me convenience. Yeah. Thanks, man. Glad to be back. Enmity says that's how voting pretty much works in Australia. Yeah, as I understand. But the problem with the Australian one is they make you vote, right? It's mandatory voting. Like, you have to vote. You don't have a choice. Probably better. And from a security point of view, that means you, or an election integrity point of view, at least you have a number you're supposed to get to, and you can measure it against that. I just have a problem with the forced voting in general. But it's sort of an intellectual one. I'm not very wedded to it. Christian, missed the crew. Morning, fam. Indeed, CK. We missed you, man. Well, glad we're back. We're a little, we're not quite 100%. I'm sweating all over after this little show. My brain hasn't been pumping like this in a while. Indeed, smash the like button, team. Yeah. Enmity says, correct, we have to vote, but it's a problem because that's what I mean. Yeah, it is a problem because it's forced. Yeah. Yeah, Rickster. Well, that is the actual formula for addiction, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that. Um, you know how addiction is created? It's when you don't get the response that you predict. That's how it starts. Right? That's why people get addicted to certain drugs. Right? They don't get the actual thing each time. The diminishing returns on getting high is where addiction comes from. You can make rats and stuff like that go nuts if you don't give them the thing they're used to getting when they hit the button. Monkeys, right? And parties have to pitch the lowest level. Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean in Australia. I never liked the forced voting stuff. I mean, it got presented to Canadians a couple times, so I saw it and I was like, I don't know. I don't mind that it's just the people that. But anyway, it's all bullshit, right? I'm not saying don't vote and all that. Kevin, audio and video has improved significantly. Yeah, free stuff wins. Yeah. So guys, we're gonna be. I think I'm going to be experimenting with, because I did enjoy making some of those pre-records. What I think I might start doing is using the live show as a let's say dress rehearsal. And I tried making a couple shorts a few times after the show as like a compressed version. I didn't really like them. I felt rushed and all that. So I'm not going to be doing a 1 minute thing. But what I may do is start recording a couple of these sections, re-recording them after I've sort of practiced them live each morning. So I might start upping my actual output of video because I do like the pre-records. It's nice to be able to be tight, and I need that practice too. I really like that practice of saying things in a tight manner. As much as I love the free-flowing, sit around with you all and talk about that stuff, it's great, and I'm not shying away from that. I think it's what motivates me and excites me. I think for channel growth, it might make sense to get some of these more condensed versions. And, synchronicity, Balaji Srinivasan mentioned immediately as I was experimenting with that last week. You ever tried the 2 minute podcast? He wrote a thing right away because he's doing 2 minute podcasts now. And I said, that's what it is, man. I'm going to start doing 2 minute podcasts. So not the TikTok stuff or the YouTube shorts, but something a little bit longer, but still pretty tight. And we'll see how it goes. Like today, I would do it on Lady Fortune and a few of these things, right? Witches trialing politicos. It's backwards. Weather balloons hiding UFOs. UFOs hiding weather balloons. It's backwards, right? So we got some stuff there. Everything's changing, though. That's the good news. Everything's going backwards. So we're winning. Have you thought about doing other shows like Fish? Yeah, I'll be on. I'm going to be on Breedlove's What is Money really soon, in like a month. Robert Breedlove's show. I'll be doing more. Yeah, I'm not against doing any of these shows, Daniel, and I will be absolutely trying to get on as many as I can. So look out for those. And I'll see you tomorrow, team. I'll be back at Washington House. So see you then. Peace. Yeah, What is Money is a good one. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm really glad you're back and better known. Yeah, I'm almost there, guys. I'm almost there. I feel better. When yesterday it was a daughter who it was me too. I had notes. I had tried to put a show together, but I couldn't get the thing out of it. I just had some notes, and I said, and then my daughter was just had a turn for the worse, and so I said, I can't do this. All right, team. Peace.